Hi everyone, my name is Mallory Doolin and I am a registered dietitian. Today I'm going to present to you on Mexican food and culture. So there are some learning objectives I want you to take away. So hopefully at the end of this presentation, you'll be able to identify traditional foods and staples in the Mexican diet, understand traditional Mexican eating patterns and meal times, discover traditional health beliefs in Mexican culture, and lastly, review current food practices and health considerations in Mexicans living in both Mexico and in the United States. So to get started, I'm going to talk about some traditional foods and dishes. So there's a lot of those fresh produce foods and crops, particularly tomatoes, squash, avocados, cocoa, vanilla, pineapple, mango, papaya, and sweet potato. Tortillas, tamales, beans, rice, and bread are big staples in the Mexican diet, and those are present at almost every traditional meal. For protein foods, egg, poultry, and fish are very popular. And then chorizo is a spicy pork sausage that's also popular in Mexican meals. Aguas naturales is a fresh fruit blended with sugar and water, and that's often had with meals. The national dish is red mole sauce, and this is had at many different meals prepared for celebrations such as weddings, and it's a big part of their culture. Another big part of their culture is holidays and celebrations. One big one is posadas. Posadas is a period of Christmas time parties, so it's quite a few days before Christmas, and where it's a big celebration, and there's a lot of special foods served. These include buñuelos, which is fried pastries with sugar, candies, tamales. There's a couple specialty beverages. One is ponche, which is a hot fruit punch, and one is atole, which is a warm milk-based beverage. It's flavored with chocolate, fruit, and nuts, and it's thickened with corn flour or masa. In addition to posadas, another major holiday and celebration is the Day of the Dead. This is a holiday to celebrate loved ones who have passed away, and they do so by honoring them on altars and providing offerings. So you can see from this image, this is what an altar may look like, or what some of the offerings may be. And so again, the families provide the offering. These include 4 elements: water, wind, earth, and fire. So the water and the earth are going to be represented by food. So water is put in pitchers on the altar. And then they are also served a bread, pan de muerto, which is a traditional bread that represents earth and again is placed on the altar. There are a few other holidays to note. So overall, the majority of Mexicans are Roman Catholic. So religion plays a major role in family, community, and diet. So there's a lot of connections there between holidays and food. So some other ones to think about are Lent, which is usually a fasting period with meatless meals on Ash Wednesday and then on the Fridays during the Lent period. So that's that period right before Easter. And then there's also the Day of Kings, and this is where they bake a big, giant, ring-shaped bread, and then they share it. So there are, as far as traditional eating patterns go, Mexican Americans used to eat about 4 to 5 meals per day. That was kind of the traditional amount. But now there's been a much bigger shift to just 3 meals a day. And those are going to be your breakfast, lunch, and supper. So breakfast, or desayuno in Spanish, includes coffee, pan dulce, which is sweet rolls, tortillas and beans, and sometimes huevos rancheros or eggs. Comida is that big first meal of the day. It is that lunch period. It is served between 1 and 3 p.m. And this is where there is soup, a meat dish, rice, tortilla, coffee, and dessert. It's a very big meal. Rice is typically served first before the main meal. The women in the family typically prepare the meal. And then afterwards, there's a very light supper eaten after 9 p.m. Meal times are a big time for family to come together. The family is the single most important unit in the Mexican culture, so this is a time where they can come together and build that sense of togetherness. Another thing to note is that there are so many different varieties of chilies in Mexican cuisine, and many of these dishes include the use of chilies. So now we're going to shift to traditional health beliefs. So again, religion plays a major role in traditional health beliefs, and this can serve as a motivator to seek medical advice, and then also a support system when medical advice is sought out. They also use herbal and folk remedies, and these are often used for self-treatment. Typical home remedies can be anything from drinks to teas to ointments, so there's a lot of different ones. One of the ones I'm going to focus on is some of the herbal remedies, or self-remedies, believed to lower blood sugar. So these are tree leaves boiled for tea, agave plant, prickly pear, cactus, aloe vera, and cat's claw. So these are some of those remedies we were talking about that they believe will lower their blood sugar. As far as traditional medicine go, one big term or keyword are curanderos, which are folk healers, and these are members of the community that treat a variety of different physical, mental, and spiritual burdens. So there is kind of a traditional timeline when a person becomes ill. The mother will decide when that illness is beyond her ability to treat. So women really tend to be that head of the household there, managing the meals and the illnesses among their family. They may try to treat with an herbal or folk remedy first, and then once the person is still sick, they'll make the next step. Family continues to be a theme here. The whole family is involved in the decision-making process. And then typically the families will decide to seek out the curandero before consulting a Western medicine care provider. It doesn't mean that they're against consulting Western medicine. It just means that those are the first steps that they're going to take, and then they'll come to consult that Western medicine decision. So that's something to keep in mind when working with this population. So as far as current food practices go, traditional Mexican diets are typically limited in added fat and high in fruit and vegetables. They are high in grains and legumes. Now, due to American acculturation, Mexicans living in America eat less rice and beans. They eat more meat and more saturated fat. And the current diet is often high in fat and inadequate in fruit and vegetable intake. So there are a lot of factors that can affect this. A lot of them are social and economical. Overall, food choices are influenced by income, education, urbanization, geographic region, and family customs. One thing to think about when economically is that Mexican Americans comprise 12% of those living below the poverty line in the US. So they may have limited access to healthy foods. They may have a need for cheaper foods, and they may not know which are the best foods to choose. Additionally, Mexican Americans tend to lead a more sedentary lifestyle. So when we're thinking about all of these current food practices, there's a lot of considerations for us as registered dietitians and nutrition professionals to consider. So overall, there's been a big change in their diet pattern from a traditional diet that's low in fat, high in fruit and vegetable intake, and grains and legumes. It's now shifted to less rice and beans, higher fat, higher meat intake. And so kind of identifying where that change in diet pattern comes from. And as I mentioned, socioeconomics could play a major role in that. Another consideration to think about is a surprising statistic that just under 75% of Mexican American men and women are overweight or obese. So thinking about that information can help guide a good education or counseling session, identifying, where the patient falls, thinking about, again, those food choices and determining a plan to achieve and maintain a healthy body weight. Additionally, due to some of the, genetics and then also to some food choices, the prevalence for diabetes is 1.7 times higher for all Hispanic Americans. So that puts Mexican Americans at a higher risk for developing diabetes. So helping determine food choices, again, is going to be important here, and then working with the patients, kind of identifying where they fall and if they have this diagnosis. So there are some special topics to address, and these can include food choices. So again, the food choices have seen a major shift in the Mexican American diet. So counseling sessions can really be catered towards this. Mexican Americans may have limited access to healthy foods. So thinking about what foods we can provide them or suggestions, and keeping in mind their traditional eating patterns, and what's significant at meal times. We can discuss and look for opportunities for physical activity. So we know that they are at a more likely to be sedentary in behavior. So looking for places for them to increase that physical activity, going hand in hand with nutrition. We need to identify, where are they living? Are they in an urban environment where it might not be safe to participate in physical activity? Do they have local resources nearby? Is there a YMCA they can join? Is there a local school they can use, the fields or the track? Kind of working with them to find that place to make sure that they're increasing their physical activity. Access to healthcare is another major consideration. Determining if they know about different healthcare options. Many times they could end up in that acute inpatient hospital situation without having an established primary care provider or resources. So when nutrition professionals are consulted to go speak with them, it's important to educate them on their options. For example, Medicare will cover diabetes care. So discussing, setting up an outpatient dietitian appointment for a patient with diabetes, giving them that information. And then also remembering their traditional folk medicine. So just asking them what remedies have they tried, what have they used, and then getting a feel for where they are in their process. Lastly, there are some cultural considerations for nutritional professionals. So that ongoing theme, Mexicans value family and social interactions. That family is that really important unit. So considering including the family in conversation, if appropriate, with the patient, giving them, telling them how it might affect the family as a unit. Considering language barriers, so Spanish may be their primary language, making sure that they understand the information, providing both written and oral communication, perhaps providing written information in their native language if appropriate, and then also making sure to really use and utilize interpreters. Lastly, how we present ourselves as nutrition professionals is so important. When working with the Mexican American population, we want to make sure that we're demonstrating courtesy and respect, that we're kind, make good eye contact, and are appropriate. And lastly, just to establish trust. Trust is a very important part, following through, explaining who we are as professionals and really working with them. And that's where all of the strategies can really come in. If we're educated and know about their culture, we'll be able to provide them quality nutrition care. Thank you for listening to my presentation on Mexican food and nutrition culture. I hope it was helpful to you.